Everyone in this session has a new competitor. This is a competitor you didn't have 2 years ago. Many of you didn't have this competitor a few months ago, and I'm staring straight at it. It's the camera. Virtual presentations are here to stay. In the States, 70% of the Fortune 500 companies say they will be hybrid for the foreseeable future. In the UK, there's a company called IWG. It used to be Reaves, but they've rebranded, and they are now opening more and more facilities for remote working. And what they're looking at is a hub and spoke concept for businesses, which means they'll have their central office or their main office downtown in the city center. Then there will be these spokes all around. Those are going to require even more virtual presentations. So the question becomes this: how does your virtual presentation compare to the other virtual presentations your contacts are seeing? And then how do you use that to overcome or eliminate the price objection? So what we're going to be talking about this session is content. There are three elements to a great video presentation or virtual presentation. One is content, which is what we're going to discuss. One is delivery. Do we stare at the camera? Do we do hand gestures? What facial gestures? By the way, when you're delivering your presentation, be conscious of your eyebrows. When eyebrows go up, the customer loses confidence in what we are saying. And the third one is technology. What are you going to do in 2021 to improve your technological skills in delivering presentations? We like to think the best product or service is going to win. It isn't. The best story wins. And part of telling our story now is doing it virtually. So let's talk about what's changed recently, and then we'll dig into how we change our message. There are two words that have entered our vocabulary, intentionally or unintentionally, and those two words are but now. You see, in December of 2019, we had our sales plans together. We knew who we were going to sell to, what we were going to sell, and then the pandemic hit, and then there was the response to the pandemic, which was the real problem. So we can say, we used to sell this way, but now. My customers used to be, but now. I used to overcome or eliminate the price objection this way, but now. So as we drill into this, I'm going to be using a number of Chuckisms. I encourage every salesperson to develop their own whatever isms, Alicia isms, so that you can use these to stimulate your thoughts as you're presenting, as you're preparing your sales call. So I use Chuckisms. Chuckism number 6 is the most popular, it's the one that's most quoted, and it says this: in the history of recorded time, no customer has ever said your price is too high and meant it. How long do you have to stay in sales before you hear the price objection? As long as it takes to contact one customer. Customers raise the price objection out of habit. They raise it out of form. I teach value-added selling, which is what we're building everything on for this session. I teach value-added selling, selling on value and not on price. And yet when I go out into the world, I buy on price. Does that make me a hypocrite? Say one thing and do another. Actually, it makes me a professional hypocrite because I get paid for what I say. Why am I raising the price objection? Why am I asking for a discount? Because like you, I work hard for my money. And if they're willing to capitulate on the price, I'm willing to take more money home with me. So when we look at the price objection, what is it really? How do we address it? And more importantly, what can we do now in virtual selling in order to overcome or eliminate the price objection based on where we are today? And where we are today is the new normal, transitioning to the new normal 2.0. We're going to see even more change. There will be a 3.0 in 2022, but for now, let's start growing ourselves as sales professionals. Most buyers are better at buying than salespeople are at selling. Most buyers, that's another Chuckism. And by the way, if you want the Chuckisms, just go to chuckisms.live. They're all there. They're free. They aren't all there yet. I think we're up to 91 or something, and there's only 70-something there, but I'll put them up there eventually. Chuckisms.live. Most buyers are better at buying than salespeople are at selling. Why is that? They do more of it. And they watch salespeople parade in front of them, virtually, in person, or on the phone, or with written proposals, or in other media. And by doing that, they're finding out what it takes to sell. And they're comparing us to others. They will now take over a sales call because many buyers are actually better at selling than salespeople are. Many buyers are actually better at selling. A CEO asked me to accompany him and his VP of sales on a sales call. And we went in and did everything we were supposed to do. They established rapport. We do that. If you don't establish rapport, don't expect to close the sale. And then we were moving into the sales portion of our meeting. It was obvious to everybody in the room the chit chat is over. We're now moving in for the kill. The customer reached down behind his desk and pulled up a laminated card. He said, "These are the 5 essential ways of selling. Which one do you intend to use on me today?" Who's in charge of the sales call? So when we look at sales professionalism, we have to also look at buyer professionalism. How good are they? And how good are we at overcoming what they are doing? How do we take control of the sales call? How do we go to the next level? Well, let's look at a buyer. Here's a buyer. He's got his computer out and he's looking at a website and trying to make a purchase. Let me ask you a question. Is he buying something for his company? Is he buying something for his home office? Is he buying something for himself? The answer is we don't know, because now we've got convoluted business sales and personal sales. We do it all online. Have you ever bought anything online? Here's a better question. Have you bought anything online today? That's how often we use these things. My granddaughter said her next door neighbors are rich. And I said, "How do you know they're rich?" She said they get a box from Amazon every day. That's their system they're using to measure success. Well, when you go online to buy, he could be on Amazon, or he could be on some distributor's website, or he could be on your website, or he could be on your competitor's website. We don't know. But when we buy online, who is the salesperson? We are. Who determines the category? We do. Who determines features and benefits? We do. If the one we pick costs more than another one that's available, who does the cost justification? We do. So because of that, our customers are becoming more sophisticated, especially corporate buyers. There are purchasing agents and professional buyers. I put them into 2 different categories, just like I put salespeople into 2 categories. There are salespeople and sales professionals. If you're in this seminar, you're a sales professional. You're trying to go to the next level. You're trying to learn principles, not just techniques. Anyone can get a job somewhere as a salesperson and call themselves a salesperson. Finish this statement for me if you would. The statement is, if I always do what I've always done, what's the rest of it?
I'll always get what I've always got.
I will have less than I've ever had before. The world has changed, hasn't it? Now, why will I have less? Well, look at what's changing. Technologies are changing, processes, demographics, regulations, and we don't have a clue what's going to happen with the economy. So the idea that we can keep on doing what we've always done and somehow progress, I think that's a little foolish thinking on our part. So how do we keep moving forward? The single most important function of sales is to teach. The single most important function of sales is to teach. If you can teach, you can sell. Let me ask you this. Is it in your customer's best interest they buy from you? What's the answer? Yes. Okay. If they buy from the competition, but it's in their best interest to buy from you, how do you explain that? Ignorance. They did not know better. Why didn't they know better? We didn't take the time to teach. You cannot teach somebody something they already know, and our buyers are getting more sophisticated. You cannot teach somebody something they don't want or need to learn. So what we have to do in our needs analysis now is try to uncover what's most important to this customer, and then do a presentation that addresses those issues, not what's most important to us. The single most important function of sales is to teach. The single most important function of leadership is to teach. If you're a sales manager, a sales leader, a VP, a CEO, and you're in this seminar, start thinking about how you can clone yourself. What have you taught your people lately? Leaders teach their followers every single encounter. Every day, if they're working for you, when you talk to them on the phone, we're teaching them. Are we doing it consciously or subconsciously? Are we doing it unintentionally? Are we teaching them things we don't really want them to know? Because here's what happens. As a leader, everything you say is amplified and everything you do is magnified. For leaders, everything they say is amplified, everything they do is magnified. Leaders are not entitled to a bad day. So let's start looking at change. I grew up in the deep South in the United States. We passed laws against change down there. Good enough for my granddaddy, good enough for me. Well, now change is happening faster than ever before and more significantly than ever before. Here's some Chuckisms on change. I'll get to them in a minute. Significant sales changes were happening prior to the pandemic. I put this slide in because it's a point we need to look at. Prior to the pandemic, things were already changing. Customers were becoming more sophisticated. Customers and potential customers, prospects, were using more technology. And so this is not something that's new, but what did happen was the response to the pandemic accelerated the implementation of those changes. So now we're going to see more as the thing continues to restart, as your country restarts, ours does, and as the world economy, which is now closely knitted together, begins to move forward. Here's the Chuckisms on change. Oh, I forgot to put this one in. What we heard prior to the pandemic, as the pandemic started, was quarantine for 2 weeks and we will flatten the curve. Did you hear any of that? Quarantine, that's what they told us in America. Quarantine for 2 weeks, we'll flatten the curve, everything will go back to normal. Then they changed 2 weeks to 4 weeks. Then they changed weeks to months. And then they got rid of flatten the curve and put in the new normal. And now we're looking at the new normal 2.0. How do we go to the next level? What could we do differently? And what must we do differently? The Chuckisms on change. There are 2 ways to respond to change. Capitalize on it or capsize under it. That's it. There are 2 ways to respond to change. Capitalize on it or capsize under it. I have clients who are having their best years yet. I have several clients who are having over 100% increase in their business as they move through the pandemic, and they're not doing what they used to do in the past, not the same products and services. So they learned how to capitalize on it. If you're in this seminar, either you learned how to capitalize on it or you're figuring out how to capitalize on it. And many of you are thinking, how can I take that to the next level? How can I do that even better? Another Chuckisms. Change is inevitable. It's going to happen. We can't stop it. Change brings opportunity. Therefore, change is an inevitable opportunity for somebody. Might as well be you. Change is inevitable. Change brings opportunity. Therefore, change is an inevitable opportunity. Somebody is going to capitalize on it. It might as well be you and me. There are some things that never change. 3 things that never change. Number 1, physical laws, like the law of gravity. That isn't going to change. We wish it would from time to time. There have been moments in our lives when we wish we could stop the law of gravity for maybe 2 or 3 seconds to recover the blunder that we made. Physical laws and truth. Whatever's going on with the pandemic that isn't honest, or the response to the pandemic that isn't honest, it'll eventually come to light. Truth doesn't change. Physical laws don't change, but here's the kicker. Human nature doesn't change. Human nature doesn't change. And human nature is the science that we use for sales. We don't need these other 2 necessarily, but we do need to understand human nature. If you look up the quote, young people today do not respect their elders. They dress seductively, and they listen to terrible music. You will find it's attributed to Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. Human nature doesn't change. This is nothing new. Life is cyclical. Life runs in cycles. So we want to look at what we're doing now and how that might impact what's going to go on in the future. There are principles, trends, and fads. You need to understand where your customer is if you're going to help them or not pay lowest price. Principles, trends, and fads. Principles rarely change. I do not teach sales techniques. Techniques do not work. If you don't know feel, felt, found, and if I could, would you, and somebody tries to get you to use those, stop. I promise you, your buyers have seen it. It's like playing tennis with a professional, and you gently lob the ball over to their side of the court. When will you see the ball again? Then you go back there to pick it up. They're going to do some things with that you cannot manage. Do not use techniques. Use principles. Trends change regularly. They change in kind of a cycle. They're changing more frequently right now. And then fads come and go, which does not mean we don't try to capitalize on a fad. It means we treat it as a fad. If we know this is going to have a short lifespan, like the plexiglass partitions that people were making. Ford Motor Company used to make automobiles, and they started making shields. Well, they realized very quickly, this is a fad. We're going to come to the end of this. They're back to making their cars again and rolling out some new models. So I came up with something called Viva. It's an easy word to remember, Viva. And it stands for virtual, because that's what we're going to talk about, interactive. If you haven't taken any notes yet, I need you to write this word down. This is the secret sauce, interactive. I'll deal with it more later. Virtual, interactive, value added, and of course I had selling. Virtual, interactive, value added, selling. Then my clients said, well, what about customer service? We need virtual, interactive customer service. And what about leadership? We need virtual, interactive leadership as well. It's becoming a part of our culture. It's becoming a part of our nature. It's embedded now in our communication. We have seen the value of work from home. We've seen the value of virtual. So now we don't want to give it up. We want even more of it. Interaction means physical interaction. We've had this customer engagement idea going along for a while, and that's kind of run its course. What can you do to cause your customer to physically interact with you? In an in-person call, I take my tablet with me and I have some interactive tools on the tablet, and I put it on their desk or on the table in front of them and ask them to operate it. And whatever button they push, I'm prepared to talk about whatever's behind that button. We have interactive PDFs. We have interactive Excel. We have interactive PowerPoint, which I'll demonstrate here in a minute. But an interactive PDF, not only when I'm doing a seminar virtually, I'll send out PDF handouts. They can write in the PDF. There are embedded videos. There are embedded audios. So when you're doing a presentation and you know there's a competitor involved and you have a higher price and you want them to pay the higher price, embed some things in your PDF. One could be a cost justification tool, so that they realize while your price is higher, your cost is lower, so they should go with you. There are 5 senses. What are the 5 senses? Very quickly, rattle them off.
Smell, taste, touch,
sight.
I said human nature doesn't change, right? Most people, 90-some-odd% of the people, can name 3 immediately. They'll pause on the 4th, and they'll have to think about the 5th. Isn't that interesting? This is the way people are. I mean, we're all human. We're all alike. Okay, of the 5 senses, how many can I use on a sales call? If it's in person, I can use all 5. We used to laugh about Joe Bag of Donuts. He would show up with a sales call and bring some donuts and coffee, taste, smell, and the customer's going to eat the donut, touch. Then, of course, we've got visual and verbal. The first virtual selling was done telemarketing. All they had was sound. Well, now, in a virtual call that we use like this, we have sight, we have sound. What third one could we add? It's touch. If you want your virtual call to stand out and increase the odds you're going to be able to sell around the price objection, you add that third element. Now, if you can help me with taste and smell, I'll cut you in on the deal. I haven't figured out how to do that yet virtually. This is what we call an interactive PowerPoint. This is a feature that is built into PowerPoint. I have 2 training sites. One is chuckreeves.online, but I have a major training site. You can learn almost anything, and I'll give you free access to it. You might want to write down the URL. It's youtube.com, YOUTUBE. You can learn anything there. I mean, it's just amazing what's on YouTube, right? the lens on my fog light, we moved to Arizona. The temperature here today is 41 Celsius. It's about 106 Fahrenheit. So the fog light lens on my car broke, and I had the car in the dealership. I said, the lights still work, but can you replace the lights? And he looked in the computer and he said, yes, it'll be $860. I said, why? He said, we have to jack it up, take the wheels off, drop the spoiler, pull the housings out, put the housings back in, put the spoiler back on, put the tires back on, let the car down. I said, I'm not that interested. I had it into another place for an oil change. I said, could you change the fog lights? He looked in his computer and he said, yes, it'll be $620. I said, why? He said, well, we have to jack the car up, take the wheels off. I went to my website, my training site, YouTube. I found a gentleman who qualifies as Bubba. He was standing in front of a car like mine, and the headline said, how to change your fog lights in 10 minutes. And it worked. I want you to use the term tips and tricks. Tips and tricks. So go to YouTube, tips and tricks for Word, tips and tricks for PowerPoint, tips and tricks for PDF. And you will find more information than you'll ever be able to absorb. These programs have an awful lot of robust capabilities. This is built into PowerPoint, and if you go to my training site, YouTube, they'll show you how to do it. Now, the way this works is, I put this in front of the customer. Now, you see I've got my topics here that relate to value-added selling, but what if this one said quality, and this one said productivity, and this one said delivery, and you asked the customer to touch the one that they were most interested in, and they touched one, they just inadvertently told you what's most important to them. More importantly, you're interacting with them. More importantly, they feel like they are involved in the sales call. This is not you speaking to them. It's the two of you working together. So I'm going to go through as much of this as we can in the time that's allotted. I teach a method of selling called plush selling. Now you'll notice when I touch the icon, it went full screen. There are 5 principles behind a successful value-added sale. A successful value-added sale is a sale that we close without quoting the price. Sometimes we quote the price and the customer simply nods. Sometimes they find out what the price is when they get the invoice. Price is not that important. So I use plush selling. There are 5 principles, but here are the rules about using these principles. This is a sales process methodology. It works like a recipe. By the way, I've been using this icon, this image for years. It's a Betty Crocker cookbook. And I can't use it anymore. I'm going to stop using it in about another month or two because the millennials are asking, well, what's that red and white thing? Yeah, not that we're getting old, we're getting wiser. So this is like a recipe. When you're going to make a dish, the first thing you do is make sure you have all the ingredients. That's the first thing we do in overcoming the price objection. The second thing we do is start following the instructions in order. If we get out of order, some things may not work. So if you'll follow this recipe, P, L, U, S, and H, do the P thoroughly and in order, then you'll find that the price objection starts going away. There are 5 principles. They must be accomplished thoroughly and in order. I'm going to cover 2 of these, the 2 most important, which is the L and the S. And I'm going to skim over the others because it would take too much time to go through them. The P is positioning. Positioning. Who are you talking to? Now that we're in this new normal 2.0, can you change who you're talking to? If the person I'm talking to can't tell the difference in cost and price, I'm selling to the wrong person. That's a Chuckism. Purchasing agents don't have the authority. A purchasing agent is given the specifications and they're told, go out and buy some of these. All they know to do to differentiate one over the other is the price, of course, and so they go for the lowest price. I don't want to talk to them. I want to talk to whoever wrote the specs. Maybe I can show them there's a better, faster, lower cost way of doing what they're trying to do. So, who are you positioned with? Where are you positioned in the client's organization? Are you down at the buyer level, or are you moving up to the engineering level, or to the HR level, or to an executive level somewhere? If your story is compelling enough, you can move up in the client's organization. You can't use the same approach on an executive that you would use on a purchasing agent. They think differently. If you want to know how to prepare a presentation for an executive, go to one of the executives in your organization and say, I need to make a presentation to the VP of whatever. What coaching can you give me? What should I be looking for? What should the presentation include? I use something called the power of three. Anytime you can do things in threes, you'll see exponential growth. The human mind organizes in odd numbers. It maxes out at 7 in a healthy mind. After the age of 26 or 28, it drops to about 5. So our short-term memory will be 5 or less. If our human mind organizes in odd numbers, then it has to be 5 or less. What are our options? If we want to have multiple responses, 3 and 5, 3 and 5, 3 and 5. So I'm constantly looking at 3s and 5s, 3s and 5s. Are there 3 people you could talk to in your significant accounts? And you define significant, not me, not somebody else. You define significant. And what you will find is when you get into solution selling, is you get 3 people of the client's organization sitting around the table talking about your product, your service, or the problem that you're trying to resolve, and they will start educating each other. They haven't had these conversations internally. You're there almost as a counselor or facilitator. The L stands for listen. We're going to drill down on this one. The U is unique. Do something unique. This is your differentiation. What sets you apart from everyone else? What sets you apart from everyone else? Write down your top 3 differentiators quickly. You only have 15 seconds to write down your top 3 differentiators. I'll put them in your mind. Number 1, number 2, number 3. When somebody says, why should we buy from you? What are the first 3 things you think of? If your response included quality, take it off your list. How many of your competitors say our quality stinks, but look how good our price is? If one of your responses was service, we have great service, so do all of your competitors. You need to have a unique differentiation, and you need to have a different differentiation for different people in the client's organization. The fact that your invoices are easier to process than anybody else's is not going to appeal to an executive like it would to someone in finance. And the fact that your ROI, or your total cost of operations or total cost of ownership, is lower than anybody else's is probably not going to appeal to someone processing invoices. So you want to have as many differentiations and then be able to show them, quantify the value to them. There's 2 key words in eliminating the price objection: qualify and quantify. Quantify means we put hard numbers on it. And where do we get those numbers? From customers. So you ask them, what does the problem cost? That's what they're willing to invest to have the problem go away. The S is the solution to the problem. We're going to talk about that in great detail. The H is help. Helping means giving selflessly. It's all that extra mile stuff that you do for your customers. You find an article somewhere and you email it to them. Well, that's helping. There's nothing in it for you except you're helping them do their job better. I told you we would talk about listening, and we will talk about the S. The L is listening. It's amazing what people will tell us and give us if we just ask. It's amazing what people will tell us and give us if we just ask. When you're checking into a hotel, even if you're not in their club, ask this question: could you upgrade my room at that rate? The hit rate prior to the pandemic for most of us was 6 out of 10 times. The front desk person wants to please. They're customer service oriented. The room's not going to be booked tonight anyway. Housekeeping will take care of cleaning it up. Sure, you start getting, my room rate when I speak at conventions is 0. And they've got some pretty bad rooms in some nice hotels. And I'll still ask, could you upgrade my room at that rate? I've gotten suites. I had the presidential suite at the forgotten which hotel it was, Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. It's a nice room, by the way. It's better than that whole Holiday Inn stuff. So let's look at listening. The human mind cannot not respond to a question. The human mind cannot not respond to a question. If I ask you a question, your brain kicks into gear. You can't stop it. What does a Hershey bar look like? I try to keep the candy bar out of your mind. You can't do it because your mind your memory works in pictures. If I'm asking you questions, I am engaging your mind. It's part of you, your physical self, that I can engage without even having to have any kind of a tool. The human mind cannot not respond to a question. So here's some questioning principles that you might want to embrace. The first one is the opening question. Before you go on a sales call, have your opening question clearly in your mind or on a piece of paper or on your tablet where you can ask it. The opening question is not the greeting question. We go out on a sales call. Hey, did you see that game last night? Understand, you people have something called football. We have something called football, and it's not exactly the same thing. Most of our players come out alive, wounded of course, but alive, and I think with your football it could be fatal. So how do they play that game? It's amazing. The opening question is how we transition from establishing rapport into the sales call. The opening question is how we transition from establishing rapport. We have to establish rapport. I buy from people that I like people who I think like me. I figured that out during establishing rapport. I buy from people that I respect people who I think respect me. I figured that out during establishing rapport. But then we ask this question that moves us into the sales call. Whoever asks the opening question takes initial control of the sales call. That's why you find seasoned buyers immediately when they sense it's time to move into the sales call will ask, so what do you have for me today? And now you're on the defensive. They're on the offensive. They're controlling the sales call. So what you want to do is come up with an opening question that will work. Here are the rules for an opening question that will work. Number one, it cannot mention whatever you're there to sell. It cannot mention your product or your service. Too many times a salesperson will open the question with, so what do you know about tires? Because I sell tires. What do you know about our widgets? What do you know about our services? Your opening question cannot mention your product or service. It cannot mention your company. The fact that you're Six Sigma, you're ISO certified, you've been in business for 100 years. And the opening question cannot mention your credentials. I've helped an awful lot of customers like you, and I think I'll be able to help you as well. If you cannot talk about your product or service, your company or yourself, what's left to talk about? What's the answer? Them. What's everybody's favorite topic? Themselves. What's the most beautiful word in the English language? Chuck. Now, you may not agree, but that's the one that I would like to hear, right? So here's where it gets interesting. Your opening question must be something about the customer. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. The customer has never heard before. Your opening question must be something about the customer has never heard before. This will put you about 40% of the way to closing the sale regardless of your price. Now, how do you come up with a question that the customer's never heard before? You do something called pre-call planning. The first activity seasoned salespeople abandon is pre-call planning. We start winging it. I've been selling these things for 10 years. I can sell them in my sleep. Well, the customer's going to sleep through the sales presentation, I think. So in pre-call planning, we go to the customer's website. Does that set you apart from your competition? What's the answer? No. How many of your competitors still lack internet access? Could I see your hands? Okay, they're going to do that as well. So now we have to take it to the next level. Change. Take it to the next level. When you go to the customer's website, do the usual. Who are they? What do they do? What's their claim to fame? What's their differentiation? Who are their competitors? You might go to their competitors' websites. You might go to the industry websites. Get as much information as you can, but stay on your customer's website until you find something you simply do not understand. What's your opening question going to be? Could you help me understand what is this in your industry? The key word in that question is help. Use that word on proposals. Use that word as often as you can with a customer. I would like to help you achieve. Could you help me do this? It is a powerful, powerful word. I was on your website and I saw, could you help me understand what is this in your industry? And they will understand you care about them because you took time to do some prep. And they become the knowledgeable person in the transaction. The next one is called the 3-question technique. Whoa, these things are coming up a little too quick. The 3-question method works like this. Ask the same question 3 times, 3 different ways. Take the third answer, you'll be real close to the truth. Ask the same question 3 times, 3 different ways. Take the third answer, and you'll be real close to the truth. Pass somebody in the hall and say, how are you? What are they going to say? Fine. Then they're going to ask you an important question, which is what? How are you? And they expect you to say what? Fine. Have you ever tried to say something else? Did they care? No. We're having this meaningless conversation. Don't go messing it up with all of your personal stuff. We use the 3-question method to find out what's really going on. So I would ask Alex, how are we doing? Alex says, fine. Should I stop there? No, let me rephrase the question, ask it again. Alex, how could we serve you better? What's Alex going to say now if he's a typical customer? Serve us better. All right, well, cut your price, gold plate your product, and reduce your delivery time. If we could do that, we would have done it a long time ago. What we have done, what I've done here, is I've gotten the knee-jerk answer out of the way, I've gotten the superficial answer out of the way, and now I'm going for the jugular. Alex, how are we doing? Fine. How could we serve you better? Cut your price. Alex, you're a sharp business person. If you ran my company, let's say, for 90 days, what are the first 3 things you would change? Notice we're asking for 3. What are the first 3 things you would change? When he starts talking, he will give me his buying criteria. The next questioning idea, introduce a third party if you have found yourself building a strong personal as well as professional relationship with your customer. It happens. Most of our customer relationships are 90% professional and 10% personal, but every once in a while we come across somebody like Alex and I were bonding this afternoon for you. The personal relationship exceeds the professional relationship. What happens to the channel of communication? Is it better or worse? It's worse. They won't tell us the bad news. We tend to protect the predominant relationship. So what happens here is we introduce a third party. Alex, how are we doing? Fine. Alex, how do others in your organization say we're doing? Alex, what's the word on the street? What are our competitors saying about us? I just freed him up to talk. He can say anything he wants to. It's not his words, it's supposedly what other people have said. Anytime you introduce a third party, you're getting it straight from the horse's mouth. If they didn't believe it, they wouldn't repeat it. Assumptive questions. Start with an assumption that you got the answer that you wanted, and then formulate your question from there. Now, Alex and I are old buds, and let's say we go out to dinner together every once in a while, and we go to football games and watch that slaughter every once in a while. So I go to Alex and say, Alex, you're not shopping the competition on me, are you? What's Alex going to say? Oh, no, not really. Let me assume he said yes, because he doesn't want to say that. What would my next question be? Alex, what are 3 to 5 things the competition does better than us these days? See how it works? There's an assumption built into the question. Lawyers use this all the time. Are you still beating your wife? You answer yes, you answer no. Either way, you admitted guilt. Build an assumption into the question. But my favorite question of all times is the $75,000 question. It got its name because I used one question 1 year to generate $75,000 in consulting fees. Here are 3 words that belong in that question that most salespeople cannot say. The words are, I don't know. Add this to your vocabulary. When somebody says, why should we buy from you? What's your initial response? Oh, right, why should you buy from us? Well, I've identified 863 different reasons why people buy from us. I'm going to read them off. If I hit something you like, you interrupt me, okay? Why don't we use I don't know? Because when I meet somebody for the first time, I don't know what they see in me. I don't know why they would buy from me. I don't know what they know about my company. But I don't know is not a question. Let's make a question out of it. I don't know, what do you think? I don't know, what do you think? And this thing is acting up, must be the heat. I don't know, what do you think? This works like magic. We think because the customer asked us a question, we have to answer it. As salespeople, we don't ever want to say, I don't know. They taught us to say, I don't know, but I'll get back to you. That's a kiss of death now. If you don't have that information right in front of you on your phone, on your tablet, the customer moves you down a notch. Forget overcoming the price objection. So I don't know, what do you think? And then they start telling us what's important. Now we have asked the question, we're in control. Jeopardy selling is doing an entire sales call with nothing but questions. Do an entire sales call with nothing but questions. Whatever you would say to the customer, say it in the form of a question. Very quickly, let's look at the S, the solution. We're running out of time here. You have had, and all of your salespeople have had training in solution selling. It's been around for a long time. Solve the customer's problem. Well, let's take it now to the next level. In the X-selling environment, X-selling means we're going to help the customer sell themselves. We help the customer sell themselves, just like they would if they were online. We want to take the solution selling to the next level. Here's the first point. The value of your solution is determined by the customer's perception, not reality. The customer's perception of the cost of their problem. That's a Chuckism, you know where to go get it. The value of your solution is determined by the customer's perception of the cost of their problem. If the customer says, I don't think my problem's that bad, what do you want to do? Drop your price or talk to them about qualifying and quantifying, there's those two words again, qualifying and quantifying the problem. And what you do is you simply walk the customer through the problem. When that problem occurs, what happens? And they say, well, this machine stops. And what else? Well, we have workers standing around not doing anything. And what else? We lose the output of the machine. And what else? What you're doing is forcing them to stop at one moment in time and think about, you know, maybe this problem is more expensive than I thought. If I can get the same thing from somebody else that you're selling, then why should I buy from you? But if you can show me how your solution will cause this problem to happen less frequently or to be remedied faster, why would I not buy from you? Price becomes irrelevant. Most customers do not know what they want. Most customers do not know what they want. What happens is customers say, we want this. Okay, don't argue with them, of course. Write this word down. The word is outcome. What are they trying to achieve? In solution selling, we are either overcoming a problem that we have experienced, or there is a problem that will prevent us from going where we want to go. So some problems are dragging us down already, and some problems are preventing us from going somewhere. So ask them, what's your desired outcome? I was remodeling a house to sell, and I was coming up on the very end, and I got a refrigerator with an ice maker to put it in the house, and the house had never had one, so I had to put a water line in. The house had galvanized plumbing, which is a knuckle buster, so I devoted a Saturday to installing the ice maker. I went down to the basement early Saturday morning, got my pencil and paper and tape measure. Then I went to the hardware store. I said, I need X number of feet and inches, half-inch galvanized pipe threaded on both ends. Another piece this many feet and inches, half-inch galvanized, threaded on both ends, a T-connector, reducing valve, copper tubing, fittings. And the man said, what are you trying to do, boy? Put in an ice maker? Yes. He said, you don't need most of that. And he sold me something called a saddle valve. I had never heard of it. I have 2 patents in electronics. I've been invited to the White House twice. I had never heard of a saddle valve. Don't think your customer knows stuff the customer doesn't know. That's why we ask questions, to find out where they are on the knowledge scale so that we can teach them what they don't know and not be redundant with the stuff they already do know. Most customers don't know what they want. They only know the desired outcome. When asked for their problems, most offer symptoms. When you ask the customer what are the top 3 problems facing your business, they're going to give you 3 symptoms. Do not argue with them. My first consulting client after leaving AT&T, I said, what are the top 3 problems facing your business? He said, our number 1 problem is attrition. I said, attrition. What was your attrition last year? He said, 112%, turning over the entire employee base more than once in the course of a year. Is that a problem? Nope. It's a symptom. What's causing it? And when you can have that discussion with your customer, the customer sees you as an asset. The customer sees you as a part of their team. The customer sees you as something other than just another vendor. The customer is curious about what other issues they're having in their organization that you might be able to help them resolve. It works like this. We ask them, what's the problem? They give us this kind of information. And then when we clarify, we get more information. And then when we qualify and quantify, we get even more information, and the light comes on. This is what we're looking for.